notice that dashi as an ingredient is in almost every recipe. So we have to have dashi. It's one of the unifying flavors of Japanese cuisine, or one of the unifying elements of Japanese cuisine. Where you may have seen bold and spicy flavors or strong flavored bean pastes in our Chinese cookery, and where we'll find some very robust and pungent flavors at the end of the week in our Thai cookery, your Japanese experience should be noticeably different. The Japanese cuisine is a cuisine based on simplicity, freshness, and not covering up natural flavors. So the Japanese stock is another pure example of the simplicity of Japanese cuisine. We make it, of course, depending on the quantity, in a stock pot or a small saucepan. And we use 3 ingredients. Actually, it can be done with as little as 2 ingredients. Water and a type of kelp known as kombu, spelled either K-O-N or K-O-M-B-U. For your basic recipe, it calls for 3 pieces of kombu. These are small little sections, 3 pieces 4 by 4. It's approximately what this is. So we put our 3 pieces of kombu, or dashi kombu, into our pot. We want to only bring it to a simmer. It's very important when making dashi that you don't allow the kombu to boil, the kelp to boil. If it's about to break a boil or starts to break a boil, you have a small cup of cold water standing by, and you immediately douse it to stop it from boiling. You don't want the boiling to happen, because boiling will bring out bitter flavors. So the 3 pieces 4 by 4, rinsed under water if necessary, if they got white. And then your water is 2 quarts of cold water, 1 quart. Two quarts. So the most basic dashi is made with just these 2 ingredients. We simmer it for 10-15 minutes until the kombu becomes flexible, kind of leathery, rubbery. It gets a little more green in color. It thickens up a little as it hydrates, and it becomes kind of flexible and has imparted its flavor. The water will become a light yellowish green color, and the aroma should be very much like the fresh seaside. The Japanese like to add one more thing to make what they call ichiban dashi. Ichi is the number 1. Ichiban means number 1, or the best. Ichiban dashi, the best dashi, has the additional flavor. This is a dried fish that has been paper thinly shaved after it's dried, called bonito. It's in the tuna family. It's got a light smoky flavor, and Japanese people use this as a garnish. They snack on it, and they use this to flavor the primary dashi. After the kombu is cooked, simmered to the point of being flexible, as if I were making it without this, it can either be left in or removed, and then the bonito flakes are added, a stir is given, the liquid is turned off, and when most of the flakes have sunk to the bottom, they've done their flavoring, and we strain out the dashi, and it's done. So that's the long and the short of dashi. We'll let it do its thing. Rolled sushi is known by the name of rolled sushi, or also called maki sushi. You might call it a kappa maki, cucumber roll, tekka maki, tuna roll. You might call it a hosomaki, thin roll, just a narrow roll, or futomaki, a fat roll. There are different kinds. There's inside-out rolls. They're all maki sushi. They're all rolled sushi. There's also another form of like rolled sushi called te maki sushi. Te means hand, maki roll, sushi hand roll. If you've ever seen those, they look like ice cream cones. When we roll sushi, we generally use a seaweed laver paper. It's a slurry. It's not one seaweed. It's several seaweeds and plankton that are made into a slurry, like making paper pulp. Then it's sheeted up like paper. Fresh nori should be crunchy and crispy. When you fold it, you may not hear it from where you're sitting, but you should hear it kind of crispy crack along the seam, like a crunchy sound, and it perforates and then should easily separate into 2 pieces, like you perforated something and you're tearing on the dotted line. If it's flexible and you have to, break it back and forth a lot, it's gotten moisture in it, and it's not very fresh, and it's not the best for rolling sushi. You want crispy, fresh nori for rolling sushi. In Japan, traditionally sushi is rolled on a piece of nori this big. It's not using the whole sheet most of the time. Japanese tradition is for smaller rolls. When you're rolling today, you'll use a full sheet of paper. Unless you're fairly adept at it, you can go to one. It's okay to roll with a full sheet. When you're using the nori, it's got two sides, obviously, and they're both fairly shiny when you look at them from far away. But when you look at them up close, one side has more texture. It's a little rough and coarse, and the other side is more smooth. It's the rough side where we apply the rice. The smooth side is the outside or presentation side of the roll. On inside-out rolls, it doesn't really matter which side you put the rice on because the rice is on the outside, so you don't see the nori inside or out. You're eating the whole thing. If you don't like to roll with nori, if you have an opposition to nori, nori is not part of sushi requirement. It's generally part of rolled sushi, but not all sushi has nori. Today, there are also soy-based sheets that can be used, and you can also roll with just rice. It's a little more of a technique. But soy-based sheets, I have these available if you want to try these. I don't find that they seal as well as the nori, but they are available. Generally, these are often used to then tempura batter and deep fry the sushi, but it can be used for fresh sushi as well. Ingredients that you have to use today, we've got beautiful unagi, grilled, cooked sea eel. It's not raw. Not all fish or product that goes inside sushi is always raw. There are cooked ingredients. All of our crab mixtures are from cooked crab. The crab is never eaten raw. We don't eat raw crab. Generally, it's cooked. So the crab is cooked. The unagi is cooked and glazed with unagi tare, which means unagi sauce. It's like a thick teriyaki sauce that it's grilled with. It's very, very tasty. If you don't think you like it just because you have an idea that you don't like eel but you've never tried it, I would encourage you to taste this today. Even before you roll it in sushi, break off a little piece and taste it. It's tender, it's delicate, and it's delicious. I have it cut both for sushi rolls. I have some pieces cut also for nigiri sushi. That's the little blocks of rice that you just set the item on top of it. So we have spicy and savory crab. The spicy crab is more orange in color. It's got the chilies in it. And the savory crab just has the Japanese mayonnaise and garlic and onion powders and some sesame oil. So two kinds of crab mixtures. There's also smoked salmon here, lox, that you can put inside as well, similar to the sake. And there's some chopped ones as well. I've got fresh sliced ahi tuna for rolls, as well as spicy tuna salad that's just the chopped up ahi mixed with some of the spicy mixtures. There's pickled daikon radish cut into strips that are perfect size for sushi rolling. They fit exactly end to end. Julienne of carrots, julienne of cucumbers, and then you have a couple of different colors of flying fish roe, tobiko. So we've got 4 of those. These are for rubbing on the outside of inside-out rolls or including inside your sushi as well. The orange one is a natural tobiko. We can call this also Japanese caviar. Caviar comes specifically from one fish, which is sturgeon, but it's the same kind of idea. It's a fish egg from the flying fish or the tobiko. The green one is flavored with wasabi flavor. They're a little bit like Pop Rocks. They pop in your mouth. They explode with flavor. They're a little salty, maybe a little fishy for some people, but they're very tasty. And naturally, they would have no color. They're clear. So both of them have color added so that and you can buy it in other flavors as well. There's a golden one, a yellow one, that is flavored with Japanese citrus called yuzu. It's very refreshing. And it's nice to have the variety of colors for decoration. Also have black and white sesame seed, or what the Japanese call goma. The white is shirogoma, and the black is kurogoma, and you can put that on the outside of rolls as well to give it a decoration. There's avocado here, although it's not cut yet, so I've got a cutting board and a knife. You can use avocado as well in your sushi rolls. I also have prepared wasabi from wasabi powder, as well as real wasabi from Florence, Oregon in a tube. Most powdered wasabi is actually horseradish powder. More horseradish, and most Japanese and Americans only eat that kind of wasabi. Real wasabi is $100 a pound here, and it's rare and it doesn't taste exactly the same. It's less frequent. Most Japanese people don't eat it either. It's not that common to get real wasabi anymore. We have this and pickled ginger, gari, it's also known as. Pickled ginger is also called gari, as your sushi accompaniments, garnishes. However, it does not go inside a sushi roll. Neither one of those items is correct inside rolled sushi. You may have had it somewhere like that. It's not the Japanese way. It is a garnish that goes on the side that's mixed. The wasabi does not properly go inside of any sushi. With the exception of what's called squeezed or pressed sushi, a small amount is painted on the underside of the fish to adhere it to the rice. It's the only place where the wasabi is correctly used inside of the sushi. Normally it goes on the side and it's garnished on or presented on a natural leaf, if it's available, called shiso or perilla leaf. In Japanese sushi places where you buy sushi to go, you might find this as a jagged piece of plastic green paper because the leaf is not that commonly found and it's very delicate, so it's often represented with paper. But the leaf has a unique flavor. Please include one if you like on your plate. I've got a couple of packages, and taste it. It's got mild antiseptic and antibiotic properties, so it was considered that back in the day, that along with the pickled ginger, which helps with digestive processes, and the wasabi has some antibiotic properties as well, that if the fish was slightly tainted or had some bacteria, that you were also eating medicine right along with the fish. So the accompaniments have a reason, and they also taste good. The wasabi is often formed by hand into little shapes, little balls, or little cylinders, or possibly little squares, depending on the restaurant. Sometimes they stamp a little design into it, or make it into a little rosette, or make a leaf out of it. But very simplistically, you just make a nice little smooth pile of it, and you present it on your shiso leaf. So you've got green on green, and then possibly a little rosette of pickled ginger, gari, to go along with it. So you've got also another beautiful color. The gari is not naturally pink. Pink coloring is, or red coloring is added to affect the pink color. You can also make gari without coloring, but the Japanese tradition is that it is colored pink. Colors in Japanese food are part of the aesthetic and the balance of the plate. Japanese cuisine is balanced on its visual appearance as well as on its taste and cooking styles. So a little gari can go on with that alongside, and then you might serve in a little separate dish, or in this case I have plastic portion cups for you to use today, soy sauce or shoyu or tamari to go along with it, because we mix, generally people will mix their soy and their wasabi together to make a dipping sauce. And you want to keep things pretty clean. The Japanese like neatness and cleanness, so when you have your, say, pressed sushi, Americans will take it, pick it up with chopsticks if they can manage to use it, and then drag the rice right through the soy mixture, and then the rice falls apart and becomes part of the soy mixture because you get it wet. The Japanese don't like that. That's messy, and it doesn't look good. It makes the table look messy, makes the food look gross to them. So the Japanese turn their nigiri sushi over and only run the fish through the soy mixture and the wasabi because the rice is already seasoned and flavored. It has su on it, which is the seasoned vinegar mixture that flavors the rice. Sushi means seasoned vinegared rice. Our sushi mats are rolled in plastic. That's meant to stay this way while you're using them. Don't unwrap them. We unwrap them for easy cleaning. Your rice is sticky because it's got su on it, which consists of sugar, mirin, rice vinegar, and some salt as the basic ingredients. Different restaurants and different chefs might add other flavorings, such as zests and things, into their su. You can go as simple as just using seasoned rice vinegar, but it's more commonly cooked down, boiled to a more syrupy consistency. Every time you touch your rice, you're going to need to wet your hands. Unless you want rice all over you, it's going to be hard to work because it's going to stick to you. So you wet your hands, you wet your knife. I'll do a couple of quick rolls here, and a straight roll, inside out roll, so you have some ideas. Show you a quick nigiri and a inari sushi, and then you'll come up, and I have a mat for everyone. You'll collect a paper bowl, some rice, some ingredients. I have more rice. You'll spread out, and you'll roll up some sushi. So the sheets are a little rectangular. They're not perfectly square, and you want the longer side horizontal to you so you get a longer roll rather than a fatter roll with more paper in it. So we lay it horizontally, and of course the mat has to be also horizontally so it rolls. If it's the other way, it's not going to fold. Again, shiny side or smooth side down, because this is going to be my outside on a straight roll, and then I put the rice on the surface. Even though we're using a whole sheet for this purpose, we only are going to cover a half to 2/3 of it with the rice. What's important when we cover the rice into this is that it's important that the rice is uniform in thickness, pretty uniform in thickness, and goes all the way to the bottom edge and all the way to the side edges. If not, the sushi roll is going to have some holes in it. It's going to have some hollow spots, and your ingredients aren't going to hold together well. So we wet our hands, make a little ball of rice, starting from the center, and then I'm going to press it and work it outwards to the edge of my nori and to the other edge. I don't need it to be super thick. More rice is just going to make it very, starchy and ricey. You want to have a nice balance of rice to ingredient. And how much rice you're going to put, whether it's a half or 2/3, depends on how many ingredients are going in, because the rice has to be enough to completely surround the ingredients. It's incorrect to have the ingredients touching directly onto the nori. They should be enveloped completely in the rice. It's also incorrect for the nori to be anywhere but on the outside. It should not curly-Q into the rice. It's incorrect, so I'll show you, except on an inside-out roll. And I'll show you how we get that. We get that by folding rice to rice. So I'm going to do a small roll, a hosomaki, which means thin roll or small roll. It's the most traditional Japanese style, although I'm using a whole sheet. They would use a half sheet for this, but you'll be using a whole sheet, most of you, so I'm showing you on a whole sheet. So I'm only going about halfway up, a little more in the length of my sheet, because I'm only going to put 1 or 2 ingredients in, and that will be enough rice to surround them. So that you can see it, I'm going to use the pickled daikon. And as you can see, it's cut almost perfectly to reach end to end in a piece of nori. And your ingredients, whatever you're using, it's important that they go end to end. If your pieces aren't long enough, then you piece it together, because every piece that you cut should have the ingredient in the center. You don't want to cut one that's just rice. Nobody's going to want to pay for a tuna roll that has, several pieces that don't have tuna in it. The tuna roll should have tuna in every bite. So I've got daikon, and in order to, another ingredient that I have for you to use today is daikon radish sprouts. These are like other sprouts, but they're peppery because they're from the young daikon. They come still attached to their growing medium, so they're still alive. All you do to use them is just cut off the growing medium, and then you've got these nice sprouts. What's nice with the daikon sprouts and fresh and pickled daikon is it's 2 of the same flavors going in, but different, it's different because this is the young spicy sprout, and this is a pickled sweet pickle. You want to line this all the way up, but because the end pieces are a little different, it's nice to leave a little bit of the greenery sticking out so your end pieces have like a little forest coming out of them. A lot of times the end pieces in sushi restaurants are discarded or saved for kitchen snacks because they don't take a lot of care to roll it all the way to the end properly. But if you roll it properly all the way to the end, you can make every piece count. You can get 8 pieces out of a roll. So I've got some daikon. I'm going to make an all-vegetable roll. Daikon radish, daikon sprouts, save the good proteins for you. And for a contrast of color, I'm going to line a little carrot down the other side. So in the middle, I'm going to see yellow and orange and a little bit of green. Now, to keep this centered, which is what I want, and I want the rice only on the outside, when I fold this, I want my rice, the bottom ridge, which is the end of my paper, to come to this rice. That's where I'm folding it to. So I'm just going to go over, bracing the ingredients so they don't roll out of place with my fingers as I go. You'll do it nice and quickly, and you roll over rice to rice. You bring the rice just to the rice, and then you tighten the roll up like you bench dinner rolls by pulling on the sutari, on the maki-su, the mat, but not on the nori, and curling your fingers under, working your way down the roll to tighten it up. It's important that the sushi roll is tight. If I open it now, you can see that my roll has started to be formed. All I need now is to roll it to the end and tighten it one more time. So to roll it to the end, I just bring the mat to the end. I can move my roll back if I need to, and fold it over to tighten it up again. If your nori is fresh and your rice is fresh, if you just sit it on the seam, it will seal itself. If your rolls come out where they're a little bit misshapen, I purposely squeezed it so I've got a funny ridge on it. See how my roll is not really round? What I can do is I can pick up the sutari and use it like a cradle and roll it back and forth to help improve the shape of my roll, to get it rounder by rolling it around back and forth. Then I'm going to sit it on my cutting board on its seam and cut the pieces out of it. when you cut a sushi roll, you need to wet and clean your blade each time if you got rice residue on it, and you usually will. We don't want to see rice starch or rice residue on the outside. Generally, the way it's done is you dip the tip of your knife, and then we just lift it up and then let the water drain off pretty much, unless it needs to be wiped to remove residue. Then visually find your center and trying to not saw too much. If you have a nice sharp knife, make it with 1 or 2 cuts down the center. My ingredients shifted a little. It's not perfectly centered, but I've got rice all the way around it. You're trying the best you can to keep your ingredients as centered as possible. You can also make ridges. When you go to cut the second piece, you line up your 2 halves, and they should be pretty similar. I'm going to wet. I've got a little rice residue, so I'm going to wet again, drip my water down, tap it off, and I'm going to go through the center of the next 2, so I have 4 even pieces, and then I cut it one more time, each group one more time, and I've got 8 identical pieces to plate. And you'll see that the end pieces, which sometimes look a little ragged, have the little daikons sticking out, so it's like a little garden, and that makes it presentable. And people enjoy getting their 8th, 7th, and 8th pieces, rather than getting only 6 out of a roll. And then I've got 8 pieces that I could present. A nice, colorful arrangement of a vegetarian roll. For an inside-out roll, so we take some rice, and in this case, you are going to press it a little more. On the regular roll, you don't want to manhandle the rice so much where you're, denaturing or disfiguring it. But on the inside-out roll, you have to press it a little more firmly because it is the outside. And you want to cover it 100% end to end. I'll need to flip it over at some point as well, and I'll show you that little trick on how we do that. So just finished putting my rice on. When you eat sushi rice or taste it, it should have a wonderful, sweet, balanced flavor from the su, the mirin, the seasoned rice vinegar, the salt, and the sugar. So it should be very tasty already. The rice is the most important thing in sushi. The rice has to be done properly. So when I've got my piece of nori, my half sheet, covered with rice, end to end, side to side, I need to turn it over because this is the outside. Before I turn it over, I'm going to take the opportunity to decorate it a little. You can do this before or after the roll is done, but while it's flat, it's kind of easy. I'm just going to do a little random decoration. You can make organized stripes or patterns with these things, but I'll put a little black and white sesame down, and for color, a smear of orange or natural tobacco, and pat it on. And for one other color contrast, I'll sprinkle in a little of the wasabi tobacco and have a little green, orange, black, and white on the outside of my inside-out roll. And it makes, for a nice appearance. Of course, now my hands are covered with ingredients, so I'm just going to clean them off. And to turn this over and stuff it now, I'm going to fold my sutari over the rice, flip it, turn it, and now I've got it inside out. Pretty simple, pretty basic, ready to go for filling. For this, rather than putting your ingredients center in the nori or centered on the rice, since the rice is on the other side, you actually only want to put your ingredient just above the bottom ridge. I'll use a piece of sea eel for this one, unagi. It's a nice long slices that he did. And lay that down just by the end. It comes all the way end to end. I think I'll just do this simple and just put unagi in this one to move it up. And then this time, since I don't go rice to rice, I'm just going to go directly over the ingredient. It's going to be rather small at first. Just fold it over and start to form the roll. Then I've got to also tighten it up a little bit, but the first roll not so much. And I'm going to roll it to the end, pulling back, and then possibly, if necessary, using my mat as a cradle to round off my inside-out roll. Place it again on your cutting board, and you've got your inside-out roll. The nori curlicues on this one because it's on the inside. And on this one, the cutting is a little bit less stringent because you really can't see rice residue on rice. So it's not as urgent that you wash it every time. You cut through the center, same way, and you'll see that the nori in this one curlicues inside. You see the little curlicue, and that's okay. Then you line it up again, cut them. These are your basic standard straight cut, but if you wanted to, you can also mix it up and cut some on the bias and change up the cut. But traditionally, rolled sushi is just cut into rounds. If your knife isn't too sharp, it may cause a denaturing of the shape, but when you go to plate them, you can always, kind of round them up again, make them round again on the plate. And you can also, because the inside-out rolls often show a little bit of the nori on the bottom, you can also present them standing up on their sides as well in a row. You can line them all up or something like that. So this is inside-out roll. These are the sweet tofu wrappers. That's kind of, it's not really a dessert, but some people eat it like dessert because they're sweet, the wrappers. All you do for this one is you take one of these wrappers, open it up, and you stuff a ball of rice inside, and then you eat it. It's tofu. It's a bean curd wrapper. They're cut in half already, and they're made into pockets. All you need to do is find where they open and separate them so that you have an open pouch. Then you wet your hand, take a small ball of your sushi rice, and stuff it into the opening. Traditionally, this often just has the seasoned flavored rice inside. Some people stuff it all the way to the end so it stays open. Some stuff it a little bit less and close it on the end and present it like a little pillow. And it's just eaten like so. So that's your inari sushi. If you wanted to try a nigiri just for presentation purposes, that's what we call pressed or squeezed sushi. You take a small amount of the rice and you make a small block shape out of it. They have molds and presses that you can do this with. You can purchase little nigiri molds, but you can do it on your cutting board. You want it to be able to sit kind of stable and be squared and hold together so it could be picked up with chopsticks. And then you would take something that would be cut for it, which today I only have unagi that's sliced for squeezed or pressed sushi. And you would take, this is the bottom side, one little teeny bit of wasabi and smear it on the bottom of the unagi. And then I would take the rice, place it in the small of my hand, take the ingredient that has the wasabi on it, the ahi or whatever, and then place it and press it or squeeze it. That's where the name comes from. You press the item to the sushi. So that is nigiri or pressed or squeezed, very simple. Sometimes people put a little strip of nori around it like a belt or other things. Sometimes they're made with a sheet of nori around the sides with a little ridge to gather loose ingredients called gunkan sushi or gunboat style sushi.